Lee, thank you. It's an honor to was honored to be asked to introduce Senator Durbin tonight. I know we're pressed for time, so I'm going to keep this short. You don't want to listen to me. You want to listen to him. You just don't. I wouldn't have time to even start covering all of the things that the senator has been involved in on a national, state, and local level for all of these years, even before he was a senator, when he was a member of Congress. But there's just a couple that you will recognize. The transit system in Macomb and the University of McDonough County. I don't think we wouldn't have it without Senator Durbin. Recently, there was a substantial grant for the Emergency Management Center complex that's developing on the campus. That was thanks to Mr. Houlihan and Senator Durbin. And Dusty, yes, I'm going to mention funding for public radio that just was put back into the bill. Are you okay? Are we all right? Good. And honestly, back in the 90s when we thought we were losing the Amtrak service, I don't know what would have happened if we hadn't had some really active people in Governor Edgar's office and a person in Washington, D.C. who came in and filled the gap and convinced the state to do the deal and keep it going. We may not have had state-supported Amtrak service, and that's just a sample. We could go on and on and on. There's been a term that I've heard a little bit frequently from some newsy folks. I don't try to listen to them too much, but they ask the question, and it's an earnest question and a concern. Where are the leaders, or are there any leaders anymore that are willing to meet the moment of what's going on in the country? I can think of two right off the bat, and one of them sitting right over there. And the other is our Senator Duckworth. You know, it's tough times right now. In a world where up is down and down is up, and left is right, and right is left, and black is white, black is white, and white is black. We need leaders who are willing to meet the challenge and step up to the table. So what I want you to do tonight, before Senator Durbin comes up, just sit back, take a deep breath, and relax, and just think very quietly about how lucky we all are to have somebody like Dick Durbin is our U.S. Senator, and how lucky the state is, and quite frankly, how lucky the country is that we have somebody like him fighting to fight with us. He's there, and he's meeting the moment. So, my honor to introduce Senator Dick Durbin.
Well, it's all true. You never know what's going to happen when you're introduced. I'm at a school in Chicago. It's a couple years ago, and we're trying to publicize the fact that there's a free school lunch. So the kids who live in tough neighborhoods can get a good, nutritious meal still at the school at the cafeteria. So we had a press conference with a bunch of little kids eating lunch, and there I am hogging the cameras in front of the television stations. And so I finished it, and I think there's a photo opportunity here. Durbin, go sit with the kids. So I went over to sit with the kids while they're eating. And the television cameras followed me over. And this one little girl sitting at the table said, "Who are you?" I said, "Well, I'm Dick Durbin." She said, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm a United States Senator." She said, "Well, good for you." So it sometimes humbles the exalted. My friends in labor, I know the laborers here, the carpenters were here earlier. Thank you so much. You mean so much to me in my career. I wouldn't be here without you. And I do everything I can to help you, and I'm going to continue to do it. But thanks for being here tonight. Let's give labor a round of applause. Eric Sorensen. where did he come from? I'm watching that Democratic primary. I'm scared because I hate to lose Sherry. She was originally a babysitter to the Durbin family. That's how she earned her stripes on her way to political fame in this country. And here she's retiring, and here comes another primary, and I'm worried about who's going to win it. And Eric Sorensen wins it. I don't know him very well. I met him maybe one time. So after the primary, I went to him, and I said, Eric, tell me about yourself and tell me about your campaign. And he says, the key to my victory in November is meteorology. I said, what? He said, the key to my victory is meteorology. Explain. I used to be the weatherman in Rockford and in Rock Island. Everybody knows me, and they like me. I'm counting on science and telling them what the weather's going to be, and the farmers all listen to me. Everybody listens to me. I think it'll work. I left there with Bill Houlihan, and I said, meteorology? What is this man thinking? Well, he was obviously thinking, and I wasn't. He won that election convincingly, so convincingly that his Republican opponent who ran against Sherry didn't even stick around to do a concession speech. He took off to go back to Chicago that night, election night. Eric is a great guy. People love him, and he's working hard at it. As Rachel explained to you, he's busy trying to build coalitions because he's in a House that is dominated slightly by the Republicans, and he knows what it takes to get things done. He's going to be a great one. Let's get him reelected, okay? Eric Sorensen. This morning I started off with an unusual stop. It's a place I'd just driven by before but never stopped. It's down in Pike County, and it's called New Philadelphia. New Philadelphia. It's a story of a man named Frank McWhorter, who was known as Free Frank. Frank McWhorter was a slave in Kentucky who won his freedom, brought his wife out of her slavery situation, and the two of them struck out for Pike County, Illinois. And they established the first town ever established by an African American in the state of Illinois, New Philadelphia, 1836. And it was a town that was well integrated, half white, half black, and they got along. There's a great story there, a great story. I told him that maybe 120 miles east of there, there's a town called Bullpit, Illinois, which I know no one's ever heard of here, but it's in Christian County, John. And right next to Bullpit, Illinois, is a cemetery, St. Joseph Cemetery, a Catholic cemetery, also known as the Durbin Cemetery. And the first tombstone in the Durbin Cemetery is Joseph Durbin, 1832. So my family kind of reaches back to that era of New Philadelphia. The reason why I mention that is not to brag about the fact that the Park Service is now acknowledging New Philadelphia as they should, and building up quite a following of people in the community who want to preserve this history and this legacy. Also, I think the bottom line is it tells us a story about history. We should learn about history, all of it, the truth, the facts. I'm an amateur historian. There are things I read about America's history that make me sad, sometimes make me angry. But I've got to read those things as well as other things as well to make my own judgment. And I want my children, my grandchildren, and their grandchildren to be able to know the true story of history and draw their own conclusions. When I hear national political figures, and you know who I'm talking about, say that they're going to start rewriting history in the books so to avoid some kind of woke culture, whatever the God that is, I think to myself, that is just unfair. The regimes, the autocratic dictatorial regimes in history always go to history first to rewrite it to make it sound good for them. Shame on them. We don't do that in America. We tell the whole story so Americans know the good and the bad and can build and learn from it. That was my lesson by going to New Philadelphia this morning and bringing that message to you this evening. I can't believe, after what we've seen with some of these groups, the Soviets and others who rewrote history, that we would ever go down that road, and I don't think we are. The man who's espousing that is not doing particularly well. But what we are facing in this country is, in Washington, a regular battle. Let me, as an aside, tell you, I'm fortunate to have by my side Tammy Duckworth. She's an extraordinary person. And let me tell you how she got there, and she'll tell you this story. It goes back about 13 years ago, and it was a State of the Union address in the Capitol. and I had 2 tickets. And I said to my staff, they said to me, who do you want to give the tickets to? And I said, why don't you call out to Walter Reed Hospital and see if there's any Illinois veteran out there who could come as my guest tonight. They called me back and said, we found a veteran. I said, great. So that evening, about 5 o'clock, the doors to my office pop open, and in comes a wheelchair with Tammy Duckworth sitting in it, in full dress uniform, full military dress uniform, being pushed by her husband, Brian, both of whom were members of the Illinois National Guard. And Tammy, of course, was in a helicopter shot down over Iraq. Well, she'd lost both of her legs, and she looked like she had a question mark as to whether she could survive with her right arm. They were going to do a lot of surgeries. I saw this woman with a big smile on her face and thought to myself, it's only been a dozen weeks since you were shot down over Iraq, and here you are in my office. I was just blown away by her courage, her amazing sense of humor, and I thought, I'm going to keep an eye on this one. So I gave her my personal cell phone and said, call me anytime. Well, she did call me anytime and every time. And she found a veteran at Walter Reed who needed a helping hand. Didn't matter where they were from, I was going to help them because Tammy asked me to. So finally, after 2 or 3 months, I called her and I said, I got an idea. Henry Hyde's retiring from the U.S. House of Representatives. You lived in general area very close to his district in DuPage County. Would you consider running for Henry Hyde's open House seat? I expected her to say, are you crazy? And she said, well, I'd have to talk to Brian about it. I thought, I got a live one here. And my goodness, she did. And I won't give you all the details, but luckily she ended up being a candidate. She didn't make it that time, but later she did make it to the House. And when the opportunity came with Barack Obama leaving, she became my colleague in the United States Senate. Let me tell you this, my friends. When Tammy Duckworth gives a speech on the floor of the United States Senate about our military or about our veterans, people stop what they're doing and listen, and they should. She deserves it. She's one of the best, and I'm proud to have her as a colleague. Give her a big round of applause. Tammy Duckworth. So how crazy is this world that we're living in? We're supposed to be the party that's weak on national defense. Do you know what's going on the floor of the Senate? A senator from Alabama named Tuberville has decided to stop the promotions of over 300 members of the military. Men and women who've served our country, risked their lives, been given combat awards for their devotion to the United States, are being stopped from getting their promotions for weeks and months at a time by one senator from Alabama. It has never been done before, never in history. And now the families of these members of the military are appealing to Congress to do something about it. Well, the crazy rules of the Senate allow Tuberville to do this. And unfortunately, it's just emblematic of what we can expect from the other party when they're just the politics of destruction and obstruction. And that's what we're faced with. So no apologies. I stand behind our military. I am proud that they have risked their lives for America. I am proud that members of my family have been in the military. And I'm prouder still that our party has always said the military is important to America's future, and we're not going to make it political. We know that's been done in the past, and I won't dwell on examples like it. But what Tuberville is doing now is an embarrassment to this country. His own party should stop him. Stop him now and get these promotions underway, and that should happen immediately. It's not the only issue that we're fighting out in Washington. I'm now chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. It took me a while, 14 years in the House and quite a few years in the Senate, to finally become chairman of a committee. But I couldn't have picked a better one and a more important one. This Senate Judiciary Committee has responsibility for a lot of issues. But one of the issues that's very important to us is judges. Under the previous president, who will go unnamed in polite company, 230 new federal judges were chosen. 3 of them were new justices on the U.S. Supreme Court. We know what happened as a result of that. We're still paying that price and will for years to come. But now we have a chance through the Judiciary Committee to bring a new group of judges, different completely from the other appointees, bring them to the federal judiciary for lifetime appointments. So we faced that. I did as chairman, first time around, the first 2 years with a tied Senate. So we had 11 Democrats and 11 Republicans, and I was supposed to pass Joe Biden's list of judges. We did it. We passed over 87 in the first 2 years. But now, The good news is that with a majority, two-vote majority, 51-49, and a majority in the committee of one vote, 11-10, we've now brought that total up to 144, and we're going to keep moving forward. And let me tell you who's included in this. We have appointed more women of color to the federal courts in the last 2.5 years at the circuit court level than in the combined history of the United States up to this point. And we have made history because the president promised that filling the first vacancy on the Supreme Court, he would choose an African-American woman. He did, and we got it through Ketanji Brown Jackson. Don't think it was a piece of cake either. It wasn't easy. I can remember Ketanji Brown Jackson in particular. One senator who will go unnamed, he's a junior senator from the state of Texas, and you can guess his name, had 15 minutes to question her. And I had to sit there counting the minutes until they were done. And he started off by saying, oh, most people don't know we went to Harvard Law School together. We were in the same study group. We had the same professors, the same friends, the same experiences. And I'm thinking, is this who I think it is from Texas? Being so darn nice. It was like he spun around on a dime at that point and started a personal attack on her and her family, who were all sitting there as he went after it. He ended up by showing a picture of a textbook that her daughter had in grade school, saying, this is socialism, pure socialism, and you're a socialist yourself. I'm thinking to myself, when it's over, I'm looking at this lady and thinking, if she stood up at this point and said, listen, I have a job, I'm on the courts, the notion of coming before you for a promotion sounded like a good idea, but I had no idea this is what you put me through. If she would have said at that point, I'm taking my family and going home, thanks for the memories, I would have understood it, but she didn't. She didn't. She was a pillar of strength. She showed that kind of poise that you want to see in a judge at the highest court of the land. And when it was all over, she was approved with a bipartisan vote in the Senate, as she should have been. It worked, and it did because she's such a good candidate and such a good justice. And I'd say to those in the room who say, is it all about diversity? It is, but it isn't just diversity of gender or race. It's diversity in the way you look at the world. These judges that we're bringing to the courts are much more open-minded to our friends at labor and your future than many of the conservatives who unfortunately rule the other way when they get a chance to it. It gives you a fighting chance in court, and that's all you ever ask for. Make sure we have the right chance to win this case for the working men and women across America. That's the kind of thing that is at stake at this time. I look at this country, and I guess it's time that many people feel very sad about it and wonder where we're going. We've been divided worse than this in the past. The students of history know what led up to the Civil War and what happened to us as a result of it. But there are deep divisions in this country. I still think there is more common ground than not. And I do believe there's a broad middle stripe in this country as well. Those who don't consider themselves really Democrats or Republicans really come closer down to our values than the other side. And that's what we can count on. Over and over again throughout history, we've had to rely on that to happen. This is a real test with what's going on in the courts today and the indictments and all the rest. Our country is divided. But I do believe that we'll come together. But it's up to us to stand up for our values and our principles. And you're here tonight because you stand up for them and actually buy a ticket to come to a dinner to hear a senator say a few words. But I think it also reflects on the fact that we've got to be a more open and embracing society. There's a judge in Chicago who handles naturalization ceremonies for new citizens. The last thing she says to them is, well, I want to ask you to do one thing as a new U.S. citizen. Be kind. Be kind. Show acts of kindness. Now, we all know what it means to be nice. Be pleasant, friendly, and open. But to be kind is to do something. That's why they're called not acts of niceness, but niceness. And why they're called acts of kindness. And it's up to us to not only stand up for our principles and values and fight for the people that count on us, and there are so many who do, but also rebuild this country from the center forward. That's what the president's dedicated to. I'm proud to support Joe Biden for re-election as President of the United States. I I've known him for all the time that I've been in the Senate, even before. He's a caring, wonderful man in his heart. And I believe that what he's doing for this country is doing his best to patch the wounds and heal the wounds and move us back together. I want to see him continue in that effort. I'm proud of Kamala Harris, too. I served with her in the Senate. She was a terrific member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. She's done a great job in that regard. So let me just close by saying thank you all for being here. There are some people that I want to just acknowledge. First, I want to make sure that I also acknowledge not only John and Joan Sullivan, but Emily Sullivan, who used to be on my staff, and her husband, Dan, and congratulations. You're an order. So thank you both for being here this evening. State Senator Mike Halpin couldn't make it because he's returning from vacation. And now a word about Tom Carper. Tom, thank you. I mean, not just from Illinois' point of view, but for the nation's point of view. How many years have you been on the Amtrak board now? 14 years on the Amtrak board. Let me tell you, he has been a reliable, solid citizen when it came to Amtrak service. I was with Mayor Inman earlier today. We talked about the service. I know it's going to continue and get better as the years go by, thanks to Governor Pritzker for making a state-sponsored service. And it's critical. Dr. Wong knows it's critical to Western Illinois University student body. The same thing is true for Spoon River, for Quincy University, all across the board. Tom, you have been a real public servant, not only as mayor of this town, but on the Amtrak board, and you deserve a round of applause. So let me close by telling you thanks. It's been a while since I've been here, and I couldn't ask for a warmer reception. Fareed, raise your right hand. Make sure. Member of my staff from Macomb, Illinois. Glad you're here. And Bill Houlihan, who's now retired but still working for me. Thank you for all you do. Last word I'll say is about my wife, who's waiting for me to come home tonight in Springfield. She created this organization that Pam talked about, this I Will organization, and did it 20 years ago, Pam. And each year they train 12 women and encourage them to run for office. And as a consequence of that, Juliana Stratton is the first African-American lieutenant governor in the history of the state. Sherry Bustos, another Democrat Republican. And the numbers continue. It goes to tell you that the women are moving on up, and they should be. It's their time. So I'm happy to be part of it and part of the cheering section for the McDonough County Democrats and Democrats from this whole region. Thank you for giving me the chance to serve you in Washington. Goodbye.
Found her in the kitchen. Imagine that. She was still helping and working. Smartest thing I did. Bring her on. About what, 6 years ago now?
It's been a little long.
A little longer than that. Smartest thing I ever did was bring her on. Thank you for supporting her as much as you have. Go ahead.
Well, we've had a wonderful evening. Our conversation with the senator this evening has galvanized us. We're re-energized. West Central Illinois, and we have people from all over West Central Illinois here tonight. So give yourselves a round of applause for coming out. We know what we have to do. The job ahead of us, we have to each one reach one. Make sure everyone gets to the polls. We can't take anything for granted. Nothing for granted. We have to be diligent in our mission to make sure our leadership returns to the White House. On behalf of the McDonough County Democratic Central Committee, we want to thank each and every one of you for coming out this evening, for giving up your precious time with your families, for traveling over the highways and the byways. And we wish you a safe journey home. But thank you, thank you, thank you.
Very well done. That's it. Drive home really, really careful, but you can drive fast. It's okay. Thanks again to all of you for coming. Thank you. If you want to stay around and help clean up,